way too expensive. We're looking at that. We're looking at things like reference-based pricing. You know, what does that mean? Here's the example. Colonoscopy is a common thing that people of my age need to do every 5 years. Well, you can get a colonoscopy for anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000. And the $5,000 one is not necessarily any better than the $1,500 one. So we may have to develop a healthcare plan where we tell members, you get a colonoscopy, we'll pay up to $2,000. If you want the $5,000 one, it's on you. You've got to pay the extra $3,000. But as part of that, we give you all the information. Here's where you can go, here's how much it costs, here's all the quality metrics. Those are some of the things that we're looking at. Step therapy on drugs. There are all sorts of things we're looking at, but here's one concept that I think is likely to come to fruition, and we need to be prepared for it. We want members to be healthy, obviously, and we want to have good benefits for our members, which means you're going to have to take more of a role in your health care. This is something that's pretty common. We're seeing it around the country. So we may have two health care plans. One will be, we'll call it Healthy Choice for now, where you have to get engaged, not only do the HRA, the HRQ, the Health Reimbursement Questionnaire, but you may have to do biometric screening. You may have to fill out a more extensive questionnaire. If you have diabetes, you've got to show that you're doing diabetes management. If you smoke, you may have to get into a smoking cessation plan. You may have to come to a health fair. All these sorts of a certain level of benefits. Now, if you want the personal direction plan where you do whatever you want, we're only going to cover retirees. Now, I told you early on, one of the things I always like to do is keep my promises, which is why I'm back here. But I also don't like to hide the ball, and I like to tell people the truth. Retirees are going to have to pay more for their health care. It's been $70 a month for, going on 8 years now, which is a very, very good deal. $70 when we started out was maybe 20% of the cost. Now it's, if you have a spouse, it's probably about 7% of the cost. And most of the retirees I talk to say, look, we understand. We talk to our neighbors, they're paying $500,000, $800,000 a month for health care. So that's one of the things that we have to do. But we can't eliminate it, and we can't make it so expensive that people can't afford to have health care. Because those folks retired, and those of you in here that are career people that are going to retire, you're retiring under a certain set of assumptions about life. And one of those assumptions is I'm going to have some health care for me and my spouse. So we're not going to throw in the bus the people that have built this union over the years. So that's what I feel about retiree health care. So that's a huge issue, and we know we have to deal with it. Timeline. So here's where we're at on the timeline. We bargained today, by the way. Didn't agree on anything, but had some pretty good discussion around meat issues. Mostly the discussion was telling the companies, hell no, because they want to undermine the meat cutter on duty and undermine the full-time meat cutter and all those sorts of things that they try every time. But we talked about some other issues that we have too with respect to the meat departments. We also spent some time talking about the grievance procedure, because with one particular company, Safeway, we have a huge backlog on grievances. And justice delayed is justice denied in some cases. These things drag out, people quit, they don't get their back pay. So we're trying to find ways to expedite the grievance procedure. We talked about those today. We have another session tomorrow, and then our next session of bargaining is February 20th through the 25th. That's all we have scheduled for right now. The contracts with Save Mart and with Safeway are extended through February 25th. But on that day, those convert to a day-to-day extension, with either party having the ability to give 7 days notice to terminate. We're more comfortable with that because that's the traditional route that we've gone. We can kind of set the timeline we think it's right, and we think it's time to light a fire into the companies and give them the notice. Now Raley's, which is a whole different story. Everybody hear from Raley's Nob Hill? Okay, a couple back there. Nob Hill, I assume, right? All right. They're a little different, and they are our biggest challenge, really, in negotiations. They've agreed to an extension through the 29th of February. 29th, were there 29 days this year in February? I think so. They've agreed to that, but no extension beyond that, and we're going to have to push them to extend. So that's the timeline. I believe that we will be bargaining into the spring. That's kind of what I believe, based on where we are and what we need to do. But again, I do not think this is a problem. If we're gonna have a fight, we will decide the time frame around that fight. We, I mean collectively. And ultimately, you know, you're gonna either have to engage and vote on accepting a contract or vote on rejecting a contract. There'll be a whole lot of things going on up until that point. But I assure you there'll be negotiations beyond February 29th. Now, some of the things we're already doing is starting to mobilize folks. We've got a plan we're putting together, and I talked about, so far, the biggest victims of the employer proposals are retirees. So a week ago, we mailed about 20,000 brochures to retirees explaining what the proposals are, what they mean, and asked them to send in cards or get online and tell us, what are you willing to do to help us beat back these proposals and win a good contract? Are you willing to come to meetings? Are you willing to make phone calls, go out and visit members, do leafleting, leaflet non-union stores, leaflet union stores? And we are getting overwhelming response, not only in the mail, but online, and people calling the office. So we're mobilizing the retirees. And of course, we got to mobilize the members as well. And we have some ways that we're developing that we're going to do that. And I'll more about that later. Let me again just talk briefly about the three employers and sort of the different approaches that they are taking. So the first is Save Mart. Save Mart, as of right now, has I'd say the most draconian, the worst proposals on the table, because all three companies have proposed the same on the health care. All three companies have in one way or another proposed eliminating holiday premium and Sunday premium and night premium and overnight time for split shifts and all of that. But Save Mart has wage cuts on the table, significant wage cuts, and they're doing it in two different ways. They've proposed on the one hand to go back to whatever the wages were in 2007 before we did this contract. And their argument is, had we known the recession was going to hit, we'd have never agreed to that 70-cent wage increase the first year and all those other increases, so we want it back. But they also have a much worse proposal still on the table, which says if there is a non-union store within, it's either 5 miles or 15 miles of your store, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, 5 miles, that they'll agree to pay or to compensate people at 115% of what that non-union store is compensating. So what that means is that if you got a Walmart within 5 miles of your store, you'll take a cut of about $8 an hour at least. Maybe more when you factor in the benefits. So I don't believe they're serious about that proposal. I think that was what you call a conversation starter. Whereas I said to the negotiator, oh, you're just trying to piss me off. No. But they do that.